We were learning, the question was that we're learning the laws of Pidyon Haben, and we included the idea of redeeming the donkey. And it's a little bit of a difficult thing to understand exactly, because other non-kosher animals don't have any sanctity at all. It's only the donkey that we redeem, and even today, a firstborn donkey, we would redeem by giving a Kohen a sheep. In fact, this ceremony has come into vogue in recent years, in which people specifically buy pregnant female donkeys to be able to be Makayem the mitzvah. You can see pictures. Go on YouTube. You can see pictures in Kikar Shabbat. They not often, but they have ceremonies. I remember, though, that somebody once asked Rabbi Yoshev, a Kolo Avrech, once asked Rabbi Yoshev, should you take off? Is it worthwhile to take off an afternoon learning session to go see a Pidyon Petra Chamor? So he said, Rabbi Yoshev just stared at him. He didn't even answer the question. But okay. But be it as it may, so the interesting suggestion that was just made was that maybe the Chamor is actually connected to Mashiach, because the Mashiach is described in the book of Zechariah as Ani, a poor, impoverished person, Rochev al HaChamor, who will ride on a donkey. In fact, in a kind of reverse engineering, that was the strategy of Yoshka. It's so funny. I mean, the Christians say, you see, Jesus must be Mashiach because he fulfilled the prophecy of the poor man riding on the donkey. Well, it's exactly the opposite. He knew you could stage this. I mean, he knew this was a prophecy, so he did the particular thing that, it doesn't prove anything. It's just the other way around. But that's I've never seen any connection. I will try to check on that. But perhaps there is a messianic overtone in the Chamor connected to Ani for Rochev al HaChamor. I used to have a minhag. I gave up the minhag. Maybe some people liked it. Probably people did like it, but the reason I gave it up, in which no matter what my shir was, when we approach a Yom Tif, I would digress and talk about the Yom Tif. I more or less stopped doing that. I kind of stay on my topic simply because I speak on the Yom Tif in so many different places that I literally have difficulty giving another shir on the Yom Tif. So my custom has been in recent months, at least, that I stay on topic no matter what, subject to my normal digressions. I mean, that is. But what's interesting is our topic is Tefillin, but in point of fact, I'm able to connect it to Megillah as well. So in a sense, you'll be able to learn a little bit about Purim in our discussion of Tefillin. Point number one is I want to just add a correction or an additional note to what we talked about last week. Last week, we talked about the Tefillin of Rashi and the Tefillin of Rabbeinu Tam, and I had mentioned a third view of Tefillin from the Gaonim called Shimusha Rabbah. That was the name of a sefer. And I should also add there's a fourth version, the Ravid. There are more than that too, but there are four basic versions that are brought down the HALACHA. I just want to explain, again, the differences in the versions. The batim, the physical black boxes, are more or less the same. The difference is the arrangement of the parshiot. So again, just to remind you, according to Rashi, let's first look at the head tefillin, then I'll talk about the hand tefillin. The head tefillin, you move from right to left, but the right to left is not from the perspective of the person wearing the tefillin, it's from the perspective of the person observing the wearer. So right to left means left to right. So according to Rashi, Rashi is the simplest. Rashi says, going from left to right, which is actually right to left from your perspective, we simply follow the chronological order of the Torah. That's all. So, furthest left will be Kadesh Li Kol Bechor in Parshas Bo. Next to it, V'haya Ki Yaviacha in Parshas Bo. Third will be Shema, which is Parshat V'yaschanan. And fourth will be V'haya Im Shamoa, which is Parshas Eikev. So according to Rashi, you're moving from here to here. You're following the order of the Torah. Now let me point out, the Shimusha Rabbah, I'm going to skip Rabbeinu Tam for a moment. Shimusha Rabbah is exactly like Rashi, except it's a mirror image. Shimusha Rabbah moves from right to left from the perspective of the Meniach. So if according to Rashi, it's going in this direction, Shema v'hayam shemoa kadesh v'haya kiviyacha, Shimusha Rabbah is kadesh v'haya kiviyacha Shema v'hayam shemoa. So basically, both the Shimusha Rabbah and Rashi have a common denominator, that the order follows the order in the Torah itself, but the machlokas is, when you go from right to left, is it from the perspective of the one wearing the tefillin, or is it from the perspective of the one observing? Right? Now, HALACHA, stam tefillin are made according to Rashi. In fact, even those who are machmir like Rabbeinu Tam, and I'll get to Rabbeinu Tam in a second again, do not follow Shimusha Rabbah. Shimusha Rabbah is miyuchad, it says, only for the greatest tzaddikim of the door. Chabad has a Masorah that the Rebbe, only the Rebbe, wears, in addition to Rabbeinu Tam. Many Chabads, virtually all Chabad, even Bar Mitzvah kids, wear Rabbeinu Tam's tefillin, as well as Rashi, but only the Rebbe is allowed to wear the Shimusha Rabbah tefillin, and in fact, that is kind of the proof. If the prior Rebbe gives a son-in-law, or gives somebody the Shimusha Rabbah, even if he doesn't say the words, you're going to be Rebbe, that's considered to be, in Chassidus, a sign of the conferral of authority. Now,
when was that put on? In the order of Rashi?
No, Shimusha Rabbah is the order of Rashi, except you're going. Yeah.
He changes.
Oh, when does the Rebbe do? I'm not sure. It is put on. It is put on last. It is put on last.
Oh, okay.
But I'm not sure. See, again, I honestly don't know. I never was in 770 for Shachris. I don't know if the Rebbe puts it on publicly or privately. It may be that he puts it on privately in his office afterwards. I don't know, but I'll try to check on that. Now, Rabbeinu Tam. Yeah. So that's correct. So it's Kadesh v'haya kiviyacha Shema v'hayam shemoa. No. Kadesh v'haya kiviyacha Shema v'hayam shemoa. And that's true according to Rashi, and it's true according to Shimusha Rabbah. The only difference is, where do you start Yamin? Is Yamin from your perspective, so I start from my left going right, or right going left, right? So Shimusha Rabbah is the mirror image of Rashi, etc. Okay. Now, Rabbeinu Tam, again, and we talked about last week very briefly, that it's obvious Rabbeinu Tam, who lived in the 1100s, did not invent a new opinion of tefillin. This is actually an ancient machlokas in Klal Yisrael, and in places like Masada and other places that we find artifacts. You will find both versions of tefillin. So it goes way, way back. Even then, it's a mystery. How did the controversy originate? But nevertheless, the one thing we can say b'vada'ut gemura is that Rabbeinu Tam did not invent this opinion. That would have been impossible. But Rabbeinu Tam's idea is that, based on the Yerushalmi and other interpretations, that it starts off like Rashi, Shema to the I'm sorry, Kadesh v'haya kiviyacha, but then you start from the other end, Shema v'hayayim shemoa, which means the two parshiot that begin with v'haya kiviyacha and v'hayayim shemoa are next to each other. So it's Kadesh v'haya kiviyacha, and then starting from the other end, it's Shema v'hayayim shemoa, and this is often described as Havayot Ahadadi. The parshiot beginning with v'haya are together. Now, the Ravid is simply the mirror image of Rabbeinu Tam. In other words, it's the same issue. The Ravid follows Rabbeinu Tam's order, except instead of going from here, from my left to my right, it goes from my right to my left. So it may be hard to remember all of this, but the basic idea is that Rashi and Shimusha Rabbah follow the order of the parshiot, except they simply differ with the idea of right and left. And Shimusha Rabbah, and Rabbeinu Tam and the Ravid follow the Havayos Ahadadi, and they also differ whether you go from right to left or left to right. Now, these are the four basic types of tefillin. I'm not aware of anybody who wears Ravid's tefillin. It's interesting. So even though Shimusha Rabbah We have the Rebbe of Hasidim might wear Shemusha Rabbah, but even the Lubavitcher Rebbe did not wear 4 pairs of tefillin. Now, I did mention, it's interesting, one of the most well-known Lubavitcher campaigns, they're called Mifsaim, is to get everybody to wear tefillin. Right, so we have the Chabad guy, are you Jewish, right, the ubiquitous are you Jewish type of thing, put on tefillin. So, interestingly enough, I guess people always try to find pagamim in everything. There were a number of people that were very critical of the mitzvah of tefillin. I'm obviously not, but I'm just reporting that there were people that were critical, and they made 2 arguments. Argument number 1 is that most of the people who will put on tefillin will never do it again, most, and therefore, what's the purpose of doing it once? On this, the Rebbe had a very, very clear response, and the truth is that there's a special category in the Gemara of a person who never wore tefillin, that there is a certain special Gehenim for a person who never wore tefillin, and therefore the Rebbe said, even if it was only worn once, you've taken the person out of that category. Besides the idea that one mitzvah causes another mitzvah, and things can lead to other things, that's true also. But even if we knew with 100% certainty that he'll never put on tefillin again, he is recharacterized in a different level in his relationship to God. That's a Beferish Gemara. The Gemara has a category of Poshe Yisrael Begufan, those who sin with their bodies, and it's Karkafta Delaymanach Tefillin Liolam, a head that never wore tefillin. Okay, now point number 2, though, is actually a more difficult point and an interesting point, and that is some of the people who put on tefillin may not even believe in Hashem. In other words, they're doing it ethnic identification, they're doing it because the Chabad guy is bothering them, etc. And therefore, the interesting question is, if I do a mitzvah, this may happen if you have non-religious relatives who come to bar mitzvahs or whatever it is, they say brachos or have aliyahs. If you don't believe that God gave this mitzvah, if I don't believe, either I don't believe in God, or I believe in God, but I don't believe in Torah. I don't believe God gave this Torah. I believe it's folklore of the Jews. Is it a mitzvah? Can there be a mitzvah if one does not believe in God, or one does not believe that the mitzvah comes from God, even if you believe in God in the abstract? That is a very, very difficult question. Some want to differentiate between Bein Adam Lamakom and Bein Adam L'Chaveiro, meaning, if I give charity to the poor, or I heal the sick, then even if I don't believe in God, I'm going to get reward for that because I inherently did a good thing. But the argument is, if I do a ritualistic action, like Shema, or Shemona Esrei, or Tefillin, or even Shabbat, if I don't connect it to God, see, there's no objective good thing that you're accomplishing other than serving Hashem. So some want to suggest that even if we assume that the atheist who cures cancer will get reward from HaKadosh Baruch Hu because they did good in the world, the atheist who puts on tefillin kind of didn't do anything, because if he's not using it to serve God, what is the objective value of the Maisa? Now, this is a deep question. This is not a simple question. Al Pi Kabbalah, the Rebbe maintained that the action itself does things, but he also pointed out it's not worse than chinuch. For example, we have a child below bar mitzvah, and we do mitzvos for a child below bar mitzvah. Now, technically, it's not a mitzvah. So, what is being accomplished? The answer is, even though it's not a mitzvah, it is training for mitzvahs. So who says chinuch can't apply to an adult? If you're 45 years old, so maybe you're not doing a mitzvah. But it's not worse than training somebody to eventually be able to do a mitzvah. This is an interesting thought, that chinuch, training, can apply at any age. And therefore, if an apikoros or whatever keeps Shabbos or wears tefillin, maybe it doesn't count but it's not worse than training somebody, habituating somebody in mitzvot, which may eventually lead. So there were criticisms, but
the trainer.
It's the trainer. Yeah. So be it as it may, this was the mitzvah of tefillin. Oh, so I want to tell you a story. So normally, this is a very cute story. Normally, when we think about who was the Rebbe's target audience, so you obviously think about non-religious people who were not wearing tefillin. But I will tell you that the Rebbe's tefillin mitzvah changed Reb Moshe Feinstein's hanhaga. So part of the Rebbe's hashpah was not only on those who were not yet religious, but on the Gadol Hador Mamish. The Shulchan Aruch writes that the tefillin of Rabbeinu Tam should only be worn by great tzaddikim. Right, so Hasidim take it on, but generally speaking, you have to be muchzak b'chasidut. That doesn't mean be a chassid, but it means you're well known in piety. So the Rebbe wrote to Reb Moshe Feinstein and said, hey, a man like you ought to wear Rabbeinu Tam's tefillin. How can you not wear Rabbeinu Tam's tefillin? Reb Moshe was not wearing it at the time. So Reb Moshe Feinstein answered, he said, in Russia, I used to wear Rabbeinu Tam's tefillin. I lost them. But the thing is this, since Rabbeinu Tam's tefillin is going beyond the halacha, I would only wear it if I had a sofer that I could 100% trust. Reb Moshe said, in America, I have not found a sofer that's 100%. So when it comes to Rashi, I got to do the best that I can, because I got to do the mitzvah, so I do what I can. But Rabbeinu Tam, if it's not 100%, I'm not going to take on a chumrah if it's not 100%. So the Lubavitcher Rebbe said, I will find you a sofer that even you will say is 100%. So he found a sofer that Rav Moshe tested and went over 100%. So Rav Moshe in his 70s or 80s began to wear Rabbeinu Tam's tefillin. So when you talk about who was Lubavitcher Rebbe Makarev, it wasn't just the guy that didn't keep Shabbos. He was Makarev, the Gadol Hador, to take on the hanhaga of Rabbeinu Tam's tefillin. Now, interestingly enough, as I mentioned last week, I think the Vilna, as great a person as the Vilna Gaon, B'dafka did not take on Rabbeinu Tam's tefillin, because the Vilna Gaon said with his genius that if you correlate all of the different opinions on tefillin, not just the four that I gave you, but the batim and the ritzuot, he says you would have to wear 64 pairs of tefillin. And of course, he was able to enumerate all the 64 permutations. By the way, just again, I'm sorry for digressing. I'll just give you another example of the Vilna Gaon's unparalleled mastery of Kol HaTorah Kula. The Vilna Gaon taught that every person should memorize a tractate of Talmud, so even when they're walking in the street, B'lechtecha v'derech, they'll have something to think about in learning. So there was one of his Talmidim who learned Maseches Sukkah over and over and over and over and over again, till he for sure knew every word by heart. And he took the misstep of asking the Vilna Gaon to give him a test on it. He was so confident that he could pass a test of the Vilna Gaon. So the Vilna Gaon asked him a question, things like, how many times is Abaye mentioned in the Maseches? How many times is Rav Yochanan mentioned? Now today we have computers, but this is without a computer. Now then he asked him, and this is still a mystery to this day, how many cases of kosher sukkahs are discussed in the Masechta? How many cases of pasul sukkahs are discussed in the Masechta? And then the Gra said an amazing remes, only he could come up with. Sukkah is spelt in two ways. Sometimes it is malay with a vav, samach vav, and sometimes it's chaser without a vav. Without a vav, the gematria of sukkah is 85. With a vav, you add 6, the gematria of sukkah is 91. So the Vilna Gaon said, malay means kasher. There are 91 examples of kasher sukkahs equal to the gematria of sukkah malay, and there are 85 examples of pasul sukkahs equal to the gematria of chaser, and of course he was able to count them. To this day, Talmidei Chachamim are trying to puzzle this out. They go through Masechet Sukkah and they try to figure out what was he counting and what was he not counting, and they try to compile this. This is actually a brain teaser for kind of an advanced Sudoku, whatever it would be, and trying to figure out the 95, the 91, and the 85. This is the graph. So by Tefillin as well, he knew there was 64 different combinations. How can you be Yotzei? Now, one other thing before I go, I want to, before I go to the Purim connection, and that is, how does Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam work? Again, I want to clarify it a little bit more on the tefillin of the yad. Remember, the tefillin of the Rosh, you're dealing with 4 parchments. That's why you see the compartments there. And therefore we have a big machlokas about the order of the parchments, right, left, right, etc. The tefillin shel yad is only one big roll. You don't have 4 paragraphs. Now, let me just explain something. If you ever would open up a tefillin shel yad and take out the parchment and roll it out, you would actually see it's not written like a mezuzah. A mezuzah has only 2. A mezuzah has Shema and Vayam Shemoah. But in a mezuzah, it's one is on top of the other. Shema, and then under it, Vayam Shemoah. In a tefillin shel yad, it actually is not that way. Tefillin shel yad is they're next to each other horizontally. So again, according to Rashi, if you would look at the tefillin shel yad, once again, you would have Shema. You would have Kadesh, V'haya ki Yaviyacha, Shema V'hayim Shemoah. According to Rabbeinu Tam, you would have Kadesh, V'haya ki Yaviyacha, V'hayim Shemoah, and Shema. So the same way you organize them in the Tefillin Shel Rosh, they're written side by side in the Tefillin Shel Yad. But there is one very, very interesting chiluk, and that is in the Tefillin Shel Yad, where it is one continuous parsha, the halacha is whenever you write a Sefer Torah or mezuzah or tefillin, l'chatchila at least, and sometimes even b'diavad, you have to write them in the order they're in the Torah. Which means, like Rabbeinu Tam, you're going to have to write it the same way you write it according to Rashi. You write Shema in column 1. You write Kadesh in column 1. You write V'haya ki Yaviyacha in column 2. According to Rashi, you would then write Shema in column 3, and then you would write V'hayim Shemoah in column 4. That's how Rashi would do it. The way Rabbeinu Tam would write it is this: Kadesh in column 1, V'haya ki Yaviyacha in column 2, skip column 3, write Shema in column 4, and then go back and write V'hayim Shemoah in column 3. Which means, even though the way it appears, it's not the order, but even like Rabbeinu Tam, it must be written in the order. Now, that's not true for the Tefillin Shel Rosh, because Tefillin Shel Rosh, you can use parshios of different years. I could use parshios that are 100 years old. So obviously, when there are separate parshios, we are not makbid in when they were written. But in a single klaf, there is a halacha of kisidran an ketiva, and that's even true like Rabbeinu Tam, which means you really wouldn't know. This is an undetectable psul, meaning if I look at Rabbeinu Tam's tefillin, and I see that order, if theoretically V'haya im Shemoah was written in column 3 before I wrote column 4, the tefillin would be puzzle. But how are you going to know that? By the way, I don't know if you heard of this. This is something interesting, and everyone knows, and if anyone has been a Baal Koreh or you've seen it, that we have a book, a sefer that's called Tikkun Makorim. So that way, if you're trying to prepare the laning, one column has the trup and the vowels, and the other column is the Ksav Ashuris of a Sefer Torah. Mm-hmm. So that way, you can prepare how to lane, right? Tikkun Makorim is every bar mitzvah boy gets a tikkun. Now, there is a more advanced form of tikkun. It actually costs a lot more money. That's called Tikkun Sofrim. Tikkun Sofrim is a manual that a sofer uses. that they consult when they write a Sefer Torah. Now, obviously, it has to be very, very, very exact, not only in terms of the letters, obviously, but the breaks in the parshiot, the ptuchot, and stumot, the paragraph divisions. Sometimes you have a paragraph division where it starts on the same line with a break of 9 letters. Sometimes it skips to the next line. And again, that may seem trivial to you, but a Sefer Torah is actually puzzle if you don't have the ptuchot and the stumot, big letters, small letters, dots, all sorts of different features. So just to give you an example of a cost, a standard tikkun for Kriyas HaTorah costs around $30. A tikkun sofrim costs around $250. It's a specialized work. So imagine this. It's really kind of a pretty serious problem. There was a very chashuv sofrim, he's still alive, who wanted to produce the definitive tikkun sofrim, and he produced it, and he kept on improving it and improving it and improving it. He was doing it on a computer, word pressing on a computer. Now the problem is, and anyone who types an email knows this, I think the sofer was not so computer savvy. When you change something in a document, that can affect the formatting, 10 pages down. In a little way. It'll move over a half an inch and whatever. It was discovered that because the sofer was constantly making changes in the tikkun, down the road, paragraph divisions were obliterated, and sofrim were writing Sifrei Torah based on this tikkun and the number of psulim. It started with that people were asking a Rav different shilas, and a Rav noticed mistakes that never existed before. And this came precisely because of the word processing errors, right? So it's a very, very serious thing. Like, again, in a typical email, it's not a big deal. Something gets moved over a little bit. In a tikkun sofrim, it is a very, very big deal, because if something is supposed to begin on the same line, and as a result of adding something, it starts the next line, you've changed it from a parsha stuma to a parsha petucha, which is actually puzzle. The whole Sefer Torah is puzzle. So this was a little bit of a scandal. They estimate, I'm just not sure, I haven't followed up the numbers, they estimate that 3,000 of these tikkunim were sold. That means 3,000 sofrim had them. And they estimate, although I actually don't believe this number, they said the average sofer, I don't believe the number, but it was reported, the average sofer can write 2 Sifrei Torah a year. Although that sounds a little unbelievable to me. And if that's true, and this was available for 3 years, so you're talking about potentially, at least, thousands of Sifrei Torah. And there's actually some recalls on Sifrei Torah that were written over the past 3 years, that they need to be computer checked. But here's the thing. Even the computer check has to be computer checked, because the computer check itself was programmed based on this best tikkun. So the computer check is not good anymore, because garbage in, garbage out. The errors were built into the computer program. So this is a bit of a specialty shaila that most Rabbanim, including me, are not necessarily experts in, but it is quite troubling. The Mishmeret Stam here in Eretz Yisrael is kind of working day and night on these various recalls. So again, if your Torah is older than 3 years, it's not a problem, because the old tikkun, right? Sometimes old is better, right? The old tikkun didn't have these problems, so you can assume it's a cheskes kashrus. Yeah. I'm sorry, you want to say?
No, I was asking, is it only 3 years?
Yeah, it's a 3-year window. They're concerned for any Torahs that were written in the past 3 years need to be rechecked to be sure that they're not guilty. And now again, the problem is this sofer, I don't want to mention his name, is not a charlatan. He is an Erlich Yid, a Yerei Shemayim. He is very skilled in sofras, and his intention was totally. He must be heartbroken that he may have been gorem these mistakes. Yeah.
I believe the Sofer allowed the book to be published if he didn't complete everything from Breitowitz to Adar to the end before it became a final edition.
No, he did complete, but he didn't proofread what he had already proofread. In other words, the problem basically was, he had proofread everything carefully, and then he made some tikkunim and changes. The problem is he didn't realize that he has to recheck everything that comes out. Yeah. Well, again, I mean, apparently, maybe he grew up in a home where you weren't allowed to have internet, so therefore he never got he never got used to computers. I don't know. Yeah.
Is it true that in the old Sifrei Torah, like the Yekusha Sifrei Torah, sometimes the column is longer, and now it's more or less standardized so that the first word in every Sefer Torah...
Yep, you're correct. Sefer Torahs, in theory, do not have to be standardized. Columns could be different sizes. Different columns can begin with different words, meaning it's not a requirement, per se, of standardization. A column could have 20 lines, a column could have 40 lines, even Megillah, you can see this. A column could have 5 lines, However, the minhagim mark, just to make it easier to check, that we today we do have certain minhagim. But halachically, even the minhag is that certain words should appear at the top of the Yomid. Selectively, throughout the Torah, there are certain passages that are supposed to begin that way. But certainly, every column does not have to be the same in every Sefer Torah. Yeah.
Is A, B, C, D.
There's no question that he has an absolute obligation, and I'm very, very sure that he did it. I don't know the person, but based on the way he's described, I would be 100% sure that he would contact.
If he wasn't able to contact them, is the Torah okay that they're using?
Well, let me point out an interesting thing. The Rambam's Shita actually is that you are Yotzei Kriyas HaTorah even with a puzzle Sefer Torah. So it's very interesting. The Rambam actually says that, if your Sefer Torah is missing a letter, missing a word, it's puzzle. But Kriyas HaTorah doesn't need a kosher Sefer Torah. In fact, if you think about this is implicit in our own Hanhaga. I mean, think about this. If we're reading a Torah, and all of a sudden we discover a letter is missing or whatever it is, so what do? It's complicated, but the basic idea is we put back the Torah, take out another Torah, and continue from where we left off. Now, you may ask an obvious question. If the Torah is puzzle, why do I just continue from where we left off? At least I ought to start from the beginning of the parsha, and maybe I ought to start from the beginning of the Torah. Shabbos Mincha, we're going to read everything from Parshas Bereshis, to what's his name. The answer is, B'di Evet, we actually rely on the Rambam, that which we read, even in a puzzle Torah, is acceptable. L'chatchila, we don't want to continue to read in a puzzle. So the truth of the matter is, as innovative as the Rambam Shita sounds, the truth of the matter is we in fact rely upon the Rambam, which is why we don't have to start from the beginning of the Parsha or reread the other Parshiyot. It's Mikan Ol Haba, meaning we're not going to continue l'chatchila to read in a Torah that is puzzle. But the Rambam says if you did, you're Yotzei. So in a way, even though this is a very serious mistake, it's not totally serious. Now, for Tefillin, it would be very catastrophic because the Tefillin, you are not Yotzei, the mitzvah of Tefillin. But I'm not sure. I don't know if this tikkun was used for Tefillin. I'm not sure. It may have been miyuchad for Sifrei Torah. Yeah.
Since you mentioned Tefillin, so they wrap it together, and you do it.
Yep. Very good. That's very good. Thinking is linear. Thinking is analytical. The word analysis actually means to divide things up.
They find a mistake.
So at that point is exactly the situation. We will continue reading in the Sefer Torah, but the big question is, will we have olim that will make new brachos? Meaning, we don't want a bracha to be made on a puzzle Sefer Torah, so we would be mamshich the kriya. Now we would call up olim. We would finish an aliyah and then say v'yamod shlishi, revi, chamishi, shishi, shvi'i. Well, we would not make a bracha on it. So, like the Rambam, however, you actually would make a bracha, but we're not as makel as the Rambam on that. Of course, one might ask a very simple question. So, what is the meaning? I mean, if a puzzle Sefer Torah, according to the Rambam, can be used for Kriyas HaTorah, then what is the what does it mean for a Sefer Torah to be puzzle? What are you losing? According to the Rambam, what is the difference between a kosher Sefer Torah?
But you said it was only b'diavad.
No, we paskin only b'diavad. The Rambam does not say b'diavad. But the short answer is there's another mitzvah about Torah. There's a mitzvah to write the Sefer Torah. So that mitzvah, most of us are not Makayim anyway, but that mitzvah you're only Makayim with a kosher Torah. So kosher and puzzle would be Nogeya, the mitzvah of Ksivas Sefer Torah. It would not be Nogeya Kriyas Torah, huh? I'm sorry. Yeah, so that's there. Okay. So now let me talk a little bit. So again, I wanted to just clarify the four main parshiot arrangement, and the interesting anomaly that according to Rabbeinu Tam, you do have to write Shema before Vayam Shemoah, even though Vayam Shemoah does appear in third place. There's a halacha of Kesiva Kesidran, and this is an example of an undetectable psul, because I look at Rabbeinu Tam's yad, I would have no idea whether it is that or that, but I assume it's done in the right way. So now let's talk a little bit about Purim and the connection of Purim to Tefillin. We know the beautiful pasuk that we recite in Havdalah from Megillas Esther, set to Purim Negunim, La Yehudim Haisa Ora V'Simcha V'Sasain V'Kar. To the Jews there was light and there was happiness and Sasain, rejoicing, gladness, Yakar, honor, glory. By the way, interesting thing. For Havdalah, when we say Havdalah, so the minhag of most people is that when we have the pasuk La Yehudim Haisa Ora V'Simcha V'Sasain V'Kar Kain Tiyeh Lanu, which is not in the Megillah, but it's a prayer. So shall it be for us. So the minhag is people often say that pasuk out loud, and people ask me, where is the makor of the minhag of saying La Yehudim Haisa Ora V'Simcha out loud for Havdalah? So you figure it got to be somewhere. I said, around looking at Mr. Burr, look somewhere. The truth is there is no makor whatsoever. And the origin of the minhag is a mistaken, maybe intentional, extrapolation from Megillas Esther. In Megillas Esther, there is a minhag that certain psukim are said out loud. And one of the psukim that are said out loud in Megillas Esther is La Yehudim Haisa Ora V'Simcha V'Sasain V'Kar. So, at some unknown date, some unknown person was hearing Havdalah, and it reminded him of Megillas Esther. So he said it out loud. And, that person, whoever it is, was responsible for a new minhag Yisrael. Again, I have nothing against it. It's perfectly mutter, because until you say the brachos of Havdalah in that introductory paragraph, you're allowed to be mapsek. So there's nothing wrong with it. But it's interesting that the minhag itself did not have a makor. It was a mistaken extrapolation from Megillas Esther that does have a makor. Another bit of Havdalah trivia. I don't want to do a musical rendition, but the song that's the nigun for Havdalah that's very popular among young people. Dun, da, 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 da. So that the origin of that is Debbie Friedman, who was, again, she died of cancer. She was a very, very fine person, but she happened to be a Reform Jew, a Reform musician, and this was her nigun for Havdalah that she wrote, Debbie Friedman. And therefore, when you have like these Haredi yeshivas that like to sing along, again, I'm not going to stop anything, but thus they should be aware. Well, maybe they don't have to be aware; it doesn't hurt. But that is the source of that. Just as I have heard, now this I cannot confirm. The Havdalah thing I know for sure. The standard, at least American nigun for the first paragraph of benching, Baruch Atah, right? The nigun, the benching, comes. It is said from Mordechai Kaplan, who composed it for his daughter's bat mitzvah, which was the first bat mitzvah that in the United States. That was the source of that. Mordechai Kaplan, Google the name. Just interesting person, Mordechai Kaplan. He went through the gamut. Started off as an Orthodox rabbi, and they went through everything till he invented Reconstructionist Judaism, and the like. Okay, but again, you're going to say, well, you could say, well, listen, there are Hasidic songs that come from Ukrainian folk melodies, and it gets sanctified. Okay, in economy, there is a process in which we bring things in, and things can get elevated. But just have a little knowledge. It's interesting to be aware of some of these.
From our generation, from our
Yeah, Debbie Friedman died a few years ago. Again, she was a very, very gifted musician, composer. Again, a spiritual person. Chas v'shalom. I don't say anything negative, but she was affiliated with the reform movement, and it's a very popular Havdalah.
Very beautiful song.
Yeah, it's a very popular Havdalah tune, even in the yeshiva world, at least among the Baal Tshuva, in particular. They love to sing it because they heard it in college and the like. Okay. Anyway, back to Megillah. So go to the pasuk. La Yehudim. Yes. Oh, they actually give the name. Okay, maybe Mordechai Kaplan commissioned him. Maybe that was it. I believe it was commissioned for his daughter's bat mitzvah. Okay, which actually makes sense. Mordechai Kaplan was not a composer. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Well, this may be a subcategory of Kabel Ha'emetz Misha Amro, so in some ways, but okay. I mean, listen. Even with Shlomo Carlebach, as you know, there are different controversies about Carlebach Negunim and the like. Again, Ein Kan Mekomo Laharich. But let's go back to the pasuk. La Yehudim Haisa Ora V'Simcha V'Sason Bikar, and Havdalah we had Kain Tiyalanu. So the Gemara in Megillah has a drash on each of these terms. Ora zu Torah. To the Jews there was light. That refers to Torah learning, a renewed commitment to Torah learning. Simcha zu Yom Tov. That's the celebration of Purim, the feasting and the rejoicing. Sason is said to be Mila, bris Mila. What does that even mean? I mean, they were doing a bris before that, but there was a renewed. I'll come back and explain this. There was a renewed commitment to the mitzvah of bris milah. What does that mean exactly? We'll see in a moment. And the final one is yakar. Glory is tefillin. Tefillin are called yakar, the glory of the Jewish people. So it mentions four things. It mentions Torah. It mentions the holiday of Purim, which is the most obvious thing. It mentions Brit Milah, and it mentions Tefillin, because Yakar, glory, honor. Yakar is honor, is Tefillin. Tefillin is the honor, the crowning glory of the Jewish, at least the Jewish man. So we do see, even though it's hard to understand exactly what this means, that the holiday of Purim was specifically connected to a renewal of the connection to Tefillin. So, just to talk briefly, what is the connection between Tefillin and Purim? By the way, this is the halachic makor of why, in the daytime at least, the men are supposed to wear their Tefillin during Kriyat HaMegillah. Technically, davening is over, right? So you don't have to wear your Tefillin. But the halacha is based on Yakar, connected to Purim. The tefillin should be worn, and this is why in Eretz Yisrael, you will notice the Avi Haben at the bris of his son, will wear tefillin, and even if the bris is in the afternoon, so it's not chakras, the Avi Haben will put on tefillin before the bris, based once again on this drasha that we find that tefillin and bris are juxtaposed. Sason is Mila, Yakar Tefillin. The smichut in this pasuk of bris and tefillin says that they should be connected. So you see two things. Tefillin is connected to bris, and tefillin is connected to Purim, because it's in the Megillah itself. So what the Gemara in Megillah? The Gemara in Megillah says, Yakar Elu Tefillin.
Did they bring in another source that's based?
Well. Yeah, it's not from the word Yakar per se, but it says by Tefillah, it says, V'ra'u kol amei haaretz, all the nations of the world will see, Shem Hashem nikra alecha, that the name of God is upon you, V'yaru mimeka, and they will revere you, they will fear you, And Rabbi Eliezer says that refers to wearing the tefillin on the head, which brings the Shekhinah down. So Chazal say that's the greatest glory a person could have, and therefore it's called Yakar because of that pasuk, even though the word Yakar does not appear in that pasuk itself. Yeah.
I've been to late readings of Megillah, like in late morning, and I've never seen the word tefillin.
It's an interesting ha'ara. Now it could be if the Baal Koreh was already Yotzei, then he doesn't have to put on tefillin again. But it would appear, the truth of the matter is, if truth be told, if the person was not Yotzei yet, and he's being Yotzei with his late reading, he should actually put on tefillin, similar to the bris, where the Avi Ben, again, in America, I haven't seen that minhag so much, but I've seen here in Eretz Yisrael that even in afternoon bris, the father will put on tefillin. Of course, yeah. You make a bracha on tefillin the whole day until night. Yeah. If you put on tefillin at mincha time, you make a bracha on your tefillin. Tisha B'Av is a good example. Tisha B'Av is the one day a year where the Ashkenazic minhag, at least, is we don't wear tefillin until mincha, and we make the regular brachas. And if you put on tefillin 5 times a day, every time you put it on, you make a bracha. If you go to the bathroom in the middle of davening and you come back and put on your tefillin, assuming you're allowed to interrupt, you make the brachos on tefillin. Unlike talis, it's interesting. And just to digress for an interesting halacha. If in the middle of shachris, I have to go to the bathroom, so I take off my talis and my tefillin, and I go to the bathroom. When I come back, assuming I'm allowed to interrupt, I put on my talis without a bracha, but I put on my tefillin with a bracha. And the difference is the following. A talis, theoretically, I'm allowed to wear in a bathroom. A talis is a garment. So therefore, my going to the bathroom is not such an interruption in the mitzvah, because I could have theoretically done it there. Tefillin I'm not allowed to wear in the bathroom, and therefore it's as if I interrupted my mitzvah legamre. So for tefillin I have to make a new bracha. For the talis I do not have to make a new bracha. Okay.
Yaviyah Ben is because of the juxtaposition of Sasson and Dikar?
That's correct. That's the marker of the shaychus of tefillin to Mila, bris Mila itself. Okay. Yep. Yep. All right. So now let's talk about.
Should a Baal Bat put that tefillin on?
It's brought down again. If it's in the afternoon, they shouldn't put on tefillin, but they should. Yeah, they should leave their tefillin on. Even the people Nasafim, even the audience, should keep their tefillin on during a bris Mila. Now, myself, if I go to a bris, if I daven shachris in one place and I go to a bris, it has not been my minhag to put on tefillin there, but there may be theoretically a makam even for that. All right, but what is the shaychus between Purim and tefillin per se? A renewed commitment to tefillin. So there are 2 answers that may suggest themselves. Answer number 1 is you'll remember that tefillin is a form of Kabbalas HaTorah, re-accepting God's Torah. Right? We put the tefillin of the Yad on before the tefillin of the Rosh, just like the Jewish people said at Matan Torah. Nasa, we're committing ourselves to action. That's the hand. And then the Nishma, then we'll try to understand it. So every morning that a person puts on tefillin, there's a new Nasa v'Nishma. We're accepting God's Torah unconditionally. In other words, my commitment to action is even before I understand everything. Now, Purim itself is a day of a renewed commitment to Matan Torah. Chazal have a drasha on the words in the Megillah, Kiyamu v'kiblu. We accepted what we accepted. The interpretation is, we accepted on Purim what we had previously accepted at Sinai. At Sinai, God held the mountain over our heads and said, if you accept the Torah, that's great. If not, I'll flatten you like a pancake. Maybe later I'll go over that. But there was some element of coercion in the original Matan Torah. On Purim, we accepted out of love what we had previously accepted out of fear. And therefore, Purim itself is a Yom Kabbalah HaTorah, and therefore it's connected to Tefillin, which is the daily Kabbalah HaTorah of Naaseh v'Nishma. Yeah.
Did women say it as well at Sinai? Did women
Naaseh
say
v'Nishma?
Nishma?
I'm assuming yes. Every single Jewish person said the Naaseh v'Nishma.
No symbolic way of.
Well, that's it's an interesting question, but again, the standard answer that is given is some people like it, some people don't like it. Is that women have a stronger internalization of this emunah. It didn't need to be manifested in an external action because it is part and parcel of their innermost spiritual essence. So, that's a mahalach, and I think you can't generalize anything that's all men are this and all women are this is always going to be a problem. But as a general tendency, women are generally stronger in inyanim of emunah than men, and as a result, the need for externality gets diminished in that sense, huh?
Doing something.
Yep. Right. It's internal. So that's one connection to Tefillin. That Purim is Kabbalat HaTorah b'Yahava, and Tefillin itself is that daily Naaseh v'Nishma Kabbalat HaTorah. There is a second aspect, and that is, everyone knows the well-known Gemara. This is probably a teenage boy's favorite halacha in the Shulchan Aruch. Chayav Adam Lifsume B'Puria. A person must drink on Purim till they don't know the difference between cursed is Haman and blessed is Mordechai. Now, the truth of the matter is, I don't want to get into the drinking issue so much. We know, in fact, the OU itself has taken positions on this, and many Rosh Hashivas have, that excessive drinking, even on Purim, can unfortunately be a dangerous thing. There have been, Baruch Hashem, not a tremendous number, but there have been some. There have been deaths due to alcohol abuse on Purim, getting into accidents and the like. There's also inyanim of Chilul Hashem. So I'm not here really to advocate for or against drinking. First of all, others say the drinking is only at the time of the Su'udat Purim, not the night before and the whole daytime, and it's only wine and not other alcohol and the like. So I don't want to focus so much on the drinking, other than to say that drinking was a medium that brought a person to simcha. But I want to focus on the significance of the cursed is Haman, blessed is Mordechai. What is the point of not knowing the difference between those two? So there is a parish from the Nesivos, one of the great Achronim, on Megillah Esther. And in his introduction, he says the following. There's a Gemara in Megillah that says that when Achashverosh took off his ring and gave it to Haman, he gave Haman authority to kill the Jews, right? That's the official authority. That was better for the Jewish people than 48 male Nevi'im and 7 female Nevi'ot, right? There's a total of 55 prophets recorded in Tanakh. Actually, many more, but 55 are mentioned by name. Rashi goes through the cheshbon. 48 of them are men, and 7 of them are women. And Haman getting the ring did more for us than all of those prophets. Why? Because what do the prophets constantly say? Do tshuva, do tshuva, do tshuva, do tshuva, be better, be better, be better, be better. And we don't listen to them at all. What happens is, when Haman gets that ring, all of a sudden we do tshuva, we come together, we fast, we pray to Hashem. So Chazal say, in retrospect, not that we're grateful to Haman we're not grateful for, but in retrospect, what Haman wanted to do to us had some very, very good effects. It brought us to tshuva, it brought us to Kabbalah Satorah. So here is the thing. When we think about the Simcha of Purim, we think about the Yeshua that Mordechai engineered. We don't think about, Baruch Hashem, there was this Gezerah that we almost got wiped out. We would have been happier if there wouldn't be such a Gezerah. But on Purim, you try to reach a level of Simcha in which you understand that you're grateful to God not only for the good stuff in life, but you're grateful to Hashem, not to Haman, you're grateful to Hashem, even for the adversities, even for the challenges, that there is no difference between the Yeshua of Mordechai and the curse of Haman, because both of them are Gamzu Latova. Both of them brought us to a good and valuable place. In other words, if we wouldn't have had the Gezerah of Haman, we wouldn't have had this tshuva. We would have just continued. So you reach that simcha. So essentially, the simcha of Purim is to understand that even the difficulties of life have a positive purpose from which we benefit, from which we grow. That's Gamzu Latova. As the Chazon Ish writes, Gamzu Latova is not the naivete that everything will have a happy ending. Unfortunately, life has tragedies. We are experiencing tragedies now. But it does mean, ultimately, everything has a purpose. Everything is ultimately for the good, even though in this life, maybe we're not going to understand it. I knew a member of my show in Silver Spring. He's not alive anymore. He was a survivor of a concentration camp. And he used to say that when he goes to Shemayim, now he is in Shemayim, he has a lot of questions he's going to ask God. And he's hoping he'll get answers. And that's an issue. That certainly is an issue. But rest assured that on some level there will be answers, even though we don't know what they are. And at least in Megillah, in microcosm, we actually see that the Gezerah of Haman did a lot of good for OUisrael. So, some see that you understand this idea in the Tefillin itself. If you remember, after the Chet HaEgel, Moshe Rabbeinu asked God, show me your ways. Hodieni na es derachecha. What was the question? The Gemara in Brachos says the question is, Moshe wants to know, why do the righteous suffer? You're a God of compassion, a God of mercy, a God of fairness. Why is there so much suffering in the world for people who seem to be good? So God gave him a very strange answer. God said, I'm going to put you in the cleft of the rock. I'm going to cover up your eyes. I'm going to pass by you. And then I will remove my hands from your eyes. You will see me from the back, and you will not see me from the front. And the Talmud says, he saw the knot of God's head's tefillin. God wears tefillin also. That Moshe saw the kesher shel tefillin. Well, whatever that means. Obviously, there's much, much here that we don't fully grasp. I see God from the back, not from the front. And I see the knot of his tefillin. So the way this is explained is, if you look at the tefillin shel rosh, you see two straps that are hanging down from the knot. One to the right, one to the left. In Kabbalah, the right signifies chesed, loving kindness. The left signifies judgment, strictness, retribution. From the front, meaning as things are happening in our lives, I sometimes see rachamim, and I sometimes see din. But from the back, meaning in retrospect, after all happens, the end of time, Mashiach, I will see that the chesed and the rachamim come from one knot in the back, meaning everything is rachamim. Gevura is rachamim in disguise, but it's still rachamim. So therefore that's the second connection, because if Purim is a reminder to see the goodness of Hashem even in adversity, that reminder is built into the tefillin as well. So those are two explanations of why tefillin has a connection to Purim. One is Kabbalah Satorah, and the other is to see the rachamim of Hashem, even bahastara, even in concealment. So I wish everyone a Freilich Purim, and Be'ezras Hashem, may Purim be a Zman of Geula and Yeshua, V'napochu, all of the enemies from Persia who tried to destroy us, it's still coming from Persia, one way or the other. May it all be reversed, and may it fall on them.